TMZ Sports reporting wrestling legend Hulk Hogan has died at the age of 71 years old. This coming through just a few minutes ago about the death of this wrestling legend.
What's up, everybody? It's Matt here at home. Just a simple vlog this morning. No microphones, no nothing. Just kind of a sit and chat with you all. It's the morning of July 25th, 2025. And I wanted to do this because, you know, there was some really sad news yesterday. Hulk Hogan passed away. Hulk Hogan was one of my childhood heroes. You know, I think he was for everybody that was in Generation X. And even if you didn't like wrestling, you knew who Hulk Hogan was. And I just remember having such fun memories attached to wrestling. And I think that's what made the whole thing so sad, you know, hearing that news, is not just the fact that Hulk Hogan had passed away, but when you start reminiscing of everything that he was a part of with wrestling, then that brought back all of the memories that I've had as a child, from my childhood all the way into adulthood, of wrestling, watching with my family, watching with my friends down at school, my brother and I watching matches together, and even going to some matches in person. And so it's like all those memories just come flooding back, and it's sad, but it's also a happy sad that you got to have those memories, you know, from back in the day and even more current times. All the way back, you know, one of my earliest memories watching was my grandfather got my brother and I the Survivor Series. I think it was 1990. And that was the year when the Hulkamaniacs team took on the Ted DiBiase and his $1 million team in the grand finale. And then Hogan and Warrior ended up being the sole survivors of that. And also in that pay-per-view, I swear they were trolling people for weeks. They had this big egg with these question marks around it. What the heck's in this thing? You'll find out on Thanksgiving night on pay-per-view. And so everybody's like, is it a new wrestler? Is it, you know, who is it? Because they already debuted The Undertaker that night, which was pretty cool. You know, part of Ted DiBiase's team. But they're like, who's going to be in this thing? And then this egg breaks open, and this person in this turkey costume gets out and dances around the ring for 5 minutes, and that was it. And they called it the gobbledygooker. What? What was that all about? And, you know, so I've been a fan of wrestling, you know, my whole life. I love wrestling. I got away from it for a while, but, you know, then I came back to it, especially in my college years. Holy cow. We were all big wrestling fans. In fact, that's one thing that we all connected on when I first got to Purdue, is just somebody started talking about wrestling and it just took off. And so, first off, shout out to all of my buddies from Purdue, graduating class of 2001. Owen Hall, Northeast 3. Man, we had it down for watching wrestling. All of us in our rooms had 2 TVs. And one TV would be on Monday Night Nitro, and the other TV would be on WWE Raw. And we'd watch them together side by side, but we'd take turns every Monday and Thursday night going to different rooms and having a big old party and watching some wrestling. And then when it came down for the pay-per-views, we'd all take the short trip into Lafayette, Indiana, and watch the pay-per-views at the Hooters restaurant, because they would always air them there, and all you had to do was eat and drink. And so those were some fantastic memories. Plus, you know, the WWE Attitude Era was probably one of the best eras in wrestling ever. They did that in response to, you know, Hulk Hogan turning into a heel, which who could have ever seen that happening, right? You know, Hulk Hogan, the yellow and the red and all American, and just say your prayers, eat your vitamins, and, you know, the ultimate good guy out of nowhere at Bash at the Beach, you know, was it 96, 97, decides to turn to be a bad guy and joins up with Nash and Scott Hall, and it just was crazy looking at people's like faces in around that that arena when they did that, and you're like, what is going on here? And so Hogan, spent several years as a bad guy, but then in perfect fashion, obviously the WCW really screwed up the whole NWO thing. They took it too far. Fans got tired of it. And so obviously WCW went from being at the pinnacle of wrestling to just falling to nothing. And then WWF took off again because they're like, okay, we learned from our mistakes. So then they brought Hogan back and they brought the NWO in, but they did it in such a really good way that, they went after The Rock and Stone Cold, but The Rock and Hogan had their match together. And then at the end, as I always say, The Rock helped bring back Hulkamania to the Hulkamaniacs. And the end of that match in WrestleMania 18 was probably one of the best memories I've ever had as far as watching a wrestling match. That one, and then the Hell in the Cell match with Undertaker and Mankind. But from a standpoint of just a really good feeling watching a wrestling match, the end of that WrestleMania 18 match was just awesome, where Hogan and The Rock got together, And then, of course, the WrestleMania 30 with Hogan and Stone Cold and The Rock was kicking WrestleMania 30 off when Rock called it when Hogan called it the Silver Dome instead of Superdome. And it was just a lot of fun memories. And I think what made it so sad upon hearing that news yesterday, because, again, I'm working at SeaWorld, and one of my buddies, because we're all firemen over there, and firemen also love wrestling, and somebody came into the first aid station and goes, "Did you guys hear Hulk Hogan passed away?" And it was just a silence across the whole room, And so we're like, "Are you sure about that?" So he started, pulling it up, and there it was, man, just article after article after article. And it was just like, holy cow, you feel like as a Gen Xer, our childhoods are disappearing. I mean, this has been a rough week as far as our childhood celebrities go. You had Theo or Malcolm Jamal Warner from Family Matters passed away. Ozzy Osbourne passed away. Now Hulk Hogan. Those are some big icons as far as, Gen X entertainment in the 1980s and 90s. And people may sit there and say, well, Matt, what do you care? Why would you, feel emotional about, why would you feel emotional about somebody who you never knew and who never knew you? Why would you feel emotional about them passing away? And while that's a really good question, it's not so much about them passing, it's the memories tied to that. There's such good memories tied to watching Hulk Hogan wrestling. And when I say that, I mean watching it with my family, on the pay-per-views and on Sunday Night Wrestling, and hearing my grandmother watching it with us going, "I can't believe I'm watching this trash." But she would still watch it. She goes, she's like, "I still can't believe I'm watching this, but yet I can't look away." And so there was that. And then we would also watch wrestling over at my grandma Schroeder's house, and my uncle, my dad, my brother and I would all watch it. We were all big into wrestling, and some of my uncle's remarks were always hilarious watching that. And so you have those memories tied to, watching these guys. And then also when I went on to college, the memories of watching all of these matches and watching Hogan go from bad, or watching Hogan go from good to bad and then back to good again later on, and then watching that with all my friends. And then later on in the fire department, we would even get the pay-per-views at the firehouse. We would all pool our own money together. So if we were working at the station on the night of a pay-per-view, we would pool our money together and basically pay the city and say, "Hey, we're going to get this," and we'd all take care of it. And we'd watch wrestling at the fire station. And it's just fun memories of that. And so, at the announcing of Hulk's passing, it's also, those memories of a kid and, and growing up into adulthood and, just watching wrestling as a whole. And also just the role model that Hogan was. He was the real American. He just embodied patriotism. And one of my all-time favorite moments was last year, at the Republican National Convention when he said, "Enough is enough," and he went into his traditional Hogan shirt tear, and underneath was the Trump and Vance shirt. I mean, it was just classic the way he did that. But he was loved by everybody. Oh, one more fun memory of just wrestling in general was my brother and I always laugh because we say that some of the back problems we have growing up were attributed to wrestling moves when we were younger. Because when we were when we were smaller, again, everybody over at my grandma and grandpa's house, all the guys loved wrestling. My Uncle Jim, my Uncle Jeff, my dad, everybody loved wrestling. And so when we would go over there at Christmas and the 4th of July and that, and everybody was over there, they always say, "Oh, time for a backbreaker," and they pick my brother and I up and they put us in one of those backbreaker wrestling moves. If you don't know what it is, go to YouTube and type in, WWE backbreaker move, and you'll see what it is. And so you're basically like bent, arched over somebody's back. We always laugh, like that's probably why our backs are all screwed up. But they used to recreate wrestling moves on us, from the backbreaker to the we call it the head rip, and then the drop the elbow on somebody's head. Because obviously when you do that, you got to sell it. So when you drop the elbow, you got to slam your feet on the ground. So it makes it sound like you did something, even though you miss them by about that much. And so I remember, that would happen in the living room at my grandma and grandpa's house. And one time, I think my Uncle Jeff dropped the elbow on my Uncle Jim, and he dropped to the ground. He was flailing around, and he, covered him for the 1, 2, 3 pin. So yeah, we had some fun memories growing up. That's one of the reasons it gets really sad, when things like this happen. Because like I mentioned, it's not so much the person, it's the memories tied to the person and everything how it impacts your life. And I was a young kid, I ate my vitamins, said my prayers, brother, And the world's gonna be without an icon now. And I saw a picture yesterday on Facebook where it showed Hogan coming up to heaven, and all the wrestlers that have passed away, Andre the Giant, the Warrior, Macho Man, and Roddy Piper, they're all standing at the pearly gates welcoming him in. If I can find that, I'll throw it in here. But yeah, even down to the toys too. My brother and I had all the wrestling toys, Hulk Hogan action figures, the WWE ring, the wrestling ring, the video game for Super Nintendo. I mean, they even, I don't remember the name of them, but they were these wrestling pals, and we had a Hogan and Warrior, and they were like these big, like 3.5 foot, like over plush wrestlers, and you could just beat the hell out of them. I think they were called like My Wrestling Buddy or something like that, or I forget the name of them, but they were literally designed to wrestle with and like just beat the snot out of these things. And we had them, and we had a blast with them. But I also, one other memory I have was back when I was in college at Purdue. It was right after my freshman year. It was during an event we had called Grand Prix Week, which is kind of a send-off to the school year and at the start of summertime. And what it is, it's a giant celebration on campus. I don't know if they do it anymore or if it's anything like it used to be, but it was a big week-long party right before the end of the school year. And so what they did was they brought all of these inflatables and that to the residence halls, and all the fraternity houses would have these giant parties, and it culminated on a Saturday before finals week of a go-kart race. And it was a full-on like professional go-kart race among the fraternity houses and private, companies that own go-karts, because the fraternity house that I was part of had a go-kart in the Grand Prix. And actually in was it 1999 or 2000? It was in 1998, which was my sophomore year, that they won the entire thing. And that was a pretty cool celebration. But anyway, we had these inflatables come to the residence halls, the big bounce castles. Well, what do you think a bunch of guys are going to do in that? Of course, we recreated the wrestling moves, and I'm thinking even to this day, I'm surprised we're all still walking and, didn't have fractured necks or anything, because some of the stuff we were doing in there was probably borderline pretty dangerous. I remember my buddy Mike, his girlfriend Amanda was participating in this with us, and he suplexed her, and, where you basically... You put somebody's head between your legs, you grab them around the waist, and you flip them up so their legs come over your shoulder, and then you body slam them on the ground. Well, he did that to her, and when she hit the ground, her legs flapped over past her head, and I think she landed on her neck. And I remember she got up from it, and she didn't know where she was. She was confused. She's like, "Guys, I got to get out of here. I can't do this anymore." And we really thought he hurt her, and thank God he didn't. She just landed in a certain way that just stunned her. But, it goes to show you that those guys doing this as a profession, like how they have to land absolutely perfectly. Because while we were landing on a big inflated floor in a bounce castle, these guys are landing on a ring. And I can only imagine the early days, like when Hogan was, upcoming, they didn't have the regulation like they have now. Where wrestlers, they're not wrestling every day, and they're not on the road every day, and they're not taking these hits all the time. There's time off, and there's contracts and negotiations now. And back in the day when Hogan really introduced the world of wrestling, those guys were just taking an ass beating day in and day out, and there were no regulations on how much they could wrestle in a week, or they would even say in some of the interviews they did, where I remember Hogan interviewed with Joe Rogan, and he was talking about the early days, and he's like, if you were hurt or not, especially if you were hurt, you would still wrestle because you didn't want to sit out, because if you sat out one match, he goes, chances are you were done. You'd never get that chance again. So guys were wrestling injured, they were wrestling sick. He goes, it was a very rough time, and they talked about the abuse of pain medications and all that, because obviously these guys are in a ton of pain, and the way they talked about it is there were just bowls in the locker room of just various pain medications and grab what you want type thing. Hogan wrestled for well over like 30 some years, almost 40 years. I can't imagine doing that, for that long, and pretty much in an unregulated league like that. It's amazing. It's a true testament to the just the willpower, and just how much those guys must have loved doing that, because the way some of them talk, like the pain that they would be in after those matches would just be astronomical, which is, again, where the abuse from the pain medications came in. But who can blame them, when you're in that much pain and you don't want to miss a match because you got to compete. I mean, you're going to do everything you can to stay in it. But yeah, just hearing some of those stories are wild. But honestly, though, you often wonder, if it wasn't for Hulk Hogan, where would wrestling be? Would we even have it the way it is today? He brought it all to life. I mean, he was the real American. His iconic theme song, I'm a real American. Him coming out with the American flag. I remember during the Gulf War, when Hogan came out with the American flag, and just, he got into it with Sergeant Slaughter and that, because they were, the WWE was brilliant the way they played that off, because it was a tough time. I didn't really understand what was going on. I was only in 8th grade, but I knew that we were at war. But, they really did a good job of like bringing out that American spirit. And I remember at the Royal Rumble, I think it was, when Hogan came out with the flag, and then Hacksaw Jim Duggan had his 2x4s with the yellow ribbons on it. It was just a cool time in wrestling. And honestly, my brother and I talked too. I don't think that we'll ever see an era like that again. I mean, early days of WWE were just, we'll never see that again. That was a time that was a moment in time that will never ever be recreated, because for one, everything is just way too regulated these days, and two, it was a time where everything went. There were no regulations on anything, especially with Jake the Snake and his snake Damien that he had. I mean, gosh dang, man, these days animal rights activists would have a field day with that. I know I've been rambling on a lot, but it's just fun stories. Like I said, there's no script attached to this or anything. It's just me talking with the camera today, and it is a little sad. I'm gonna miss seeing him out and about on his appearances on wrestling every now and then. Even in more current times, he'd still show up on WWE from time to time for something, and just an absolute icon. The world's gonna miss him. And then, like I said, all of my memories tied to him. I miss that, and I think it's the fun of watching him and all the other guys, with my family, with my friends. That's what I think stings the most, is just, remembering all that, and thank goodness we're able to have those memories. We'll see what the future brings, but it's going to be sad without Hulk Hogan. I will tell you, I'm sure they're gonna live stream his service. I would imagine, and it's probably going to be absolutely gigantic, wherever it will be. But we'll follow up with it. But I wanted to bookend this talk too with, I started it off with a video that was pretty touching. I don't know who put that out there, and frankly, I don't care if YouTube copyrights it. I just want to share it. And then we're going to wrap it up with this one here. And like I said, I think they're perfect bookends to this. So if you're a wrestling fan, I know you're feeling it. We just got to stick together, and like everything, you know, this will come and it'll go. But like I said, Hulk Hogan was a true icon. He was way ahead of his time when he got started, and there'll never be another like him. He's like Michael Jordan of basketball, and you know, some of the, if you've ever noticed, every professional sport has had one person usually that has defined that sport, and Hogan was definitely it for wrestling. And I know all your wrestling buddies that have passed on before welcomed you with open arms up there in heaven, and I'm pretty sure heaven's got a WWE up there. Well, everybody, I think that's it. Hulk Hogan, rest in peace, brother. Thanks for the memories, my friend. I enjoyed them. Enjoyed everything you did, and brought some really good memories to me by watching you. And I'm sure at some point, all of us in this world will be reunited again. You just have to believe. All right, everybody, I'm going to wrap it up with this video. I'll see you on the next one. I'll see everybody.
May you grow up to be righteous. May you grow up to be true. May you always know the truth and see the light surrounding you.
And I'm going to the top of the ladder, and I thank each and every one of you for bringing the Hulkster back here, Daddy.
May you always be courageous, stand upright and be strong, and may you stay. Forever young.
I'm really proud of you. I knew I'd go to West Side and find out.
Forever young.
Hulkamania is running wild.
Forever young.
Say your prayers. Eat your vitamins.
May you stay. Forever young.
Well, you know something, Mean Gene. I don't believe it. Feel the electricity. You can cut it with a knife.
May your hands always be busy. May your feet always be swift. May you have a strong foundation when the winds of change shift.
You can call this the New World Order of Wrestling, brother.
May your heart always be joyful. May your song always be sung, and may you stay.
The Hulkster's back.
Forever young.
I am officially home, brothers.
Forever young. Forever young. May you stay. Forever young.
I'm here to say I appreciate the living hell out of what you've done for this business. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, the incredible Hulk Hogan!